The sound of the water filter in the small aquarium used to be comforting to me. It was a soft hum that filled the quiet corners of my house after everyone had gone. These days, though, even that hum feels heavy, like it's reminding me of everything I've lost. My daughter Rachel bought that fish tank when she was 12. I remember her face lighting up as she carried the little plastic bag with 2 tiny goldfish inside her fingers, gripping the top with such tenderness. "I'll name them Daisy and Bloom," she said, beaming. She even made them a little cardboard castle and fed them flakes twice a day, whispering goodnight through the glass. That same girl, my sweet, emotional little girl, who once cried when her fish died, hasn't stepped through my front door in almost 2 years. I'm 61 now, and I live alone in the same house where she grew up. It used to be a home full of laughter and noise, with sticky notes on the fridge, homework scattered on the dining table, and the faint scent of lavender from my candles. Now it smells like medication and disinfectant. My days are measured by the beeping of my pill timer and the creaking of floorboards under my own slow steps. I never thought the woman who held her child through fevers, heartbreaks, and nightmares would one day sit by herself, waiting for that same child to call. I got sick 3 years ago. Nothing sudden, just a slow betrayal by my own body, an illness that wears you down quietly until one day you wake up and realize you can't carry the laundry upstairs without gasping for air. The doctors called it an autoimmune condition. I called it loneliness made visible. When it started, Rachel promised she'd visit every weekend. "You're my mom," she said. "Of course I'll be there." But visits turned into phone calls. Then calls turned into texts. Then silence. The last time I saw her was the week before my second hospital stay. She came by for 20 minutes, sat on her phone most of the time, and left after saying, "I'll try to come next week, Mom." I never saw her again. It's strange how the people you raise can grow into strangers right before your eyes. I used to think I'd failed as a mother, that maybe I'd smothered her too much or not enough. But the truth is, Rachel's absence isn't just neglect, it's avoidance. Avoidance of guilt maybe, or fear, or maybe she just stopped needing me. A few months ago, I was admitted to the hospital again. I didn't tell anyone at first, but when the nurse asked if I wanted to call family, I gave her Rachel's number. She called twice. No answer. Then she texted me, "Hey Mom, saw a missed call. I'm super busy with work this week. Hope you're okay?" That was it. I stared at that message for hours, the words blurring together until they didn't even look like English anymore. I remember thinking if her fish were still alive and one of them got sick, she'd probably rush to the pet store for medicine. But me, I was just another notification she could ignore. When I finally came home, the house felt colder than ever. The old fish tank was still there, empty and dusty. I hadn't had the heart to throw it out. The glass was cloudy, and a little crack ran down one corner, but I kept it anyway, maybe, because it reminded me of the days when I still mattered to her. When she was little, Rachel used to say, "Mom, I want to be just like you when I grow up." I used to smile and say, "I hope you become better than me." I didn't realize she'd take that as an instruction to outgrow me completely. My neighbor Linda sometimes drops by with soup or groceries. She's around my age, widowed, kind-hearted. She likes to talk, but sometimes her kindness cuts deep. One evening she said, "My daughter's taking me on a cruise next spring. You should ask Rachel to plan something with you too." I smiled and nodded, pretending not to notice the lump forming in my throat. I didn't tell her that Rachel hadn't even sent a Christmas card last year, or that I'd spent Thanksgiving reheating frozen mashed potatoes while watching families on TV laugh around their tables. You tell yourself that motherhood is unconditional love, that no matter what happens, you'll always forgive. But forgiveness feels hollow when the person you love most in this world doesn't even remember what your voice sounds like anymore. One rainy afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was Rachel's fiancé, Mark. I froze. "Mrs. Peterson," he said softly, "I just thought you should know. Rachel's been under a lot of stress. Work's been tough, and she's been talking about maybe reaching out soon." Maybe? Those words stung. I thanked him and hung up my hands, shaking. She could talk about reaching out but never actually do it. That night, I found myself sitting in front of the empty fish tank again. The rain outside tapped against the window, and for some reason I started talking out loud, as if Rachel could hear me. "You cried when Daisy died," I whispered. "You buried her in the backyard with a spoon and made a cross from popsicle sticks. You said, 'It's not fair, Mom, she didn't deserve to die.' You cried for hours." My voice broke. "But I guess I don't deserve your tears." I didn't expect her to suddenly show up or apologize. I just wanted acknowledgement that I still existed in her world somewhere. But the silence stretched on day after day until it became its own kind of cruelty. One morning, while scrolling through social media, I saw a photo of Rachel and Mark at a restaurant, smiling, celebrating their engagement. The caption read, "To forever and new beginnings." My chest tightened. She looked radiant, happy. The kind of happy that used to come from our Sunday pancakes or late-night movie marathons. Now it belonged to someone else. I didn't comment, didn't even like the post. I just sat there staring at the screen until tears blurred the image. Later that night, I took out an old shoebox from under my bed. Inside were letters, drawings, and birthday cards Rachel made for me over the years. One said, "To the best mom in the world, you're my hero." Another one written in crayon read, "I'll never stop loving you, Mommy." I laughed through my tears. Kids mean it when they write those things. It's life that makes them forget. A few weeks later, my health took another dip. My doctor told me my immune system was worsening and that I'd need more consistent care. "Do you have anyone at home?" he asked gently. I smiled and said, "No, it's just me." His eyes softened with pity, and I hated that. Pity makes you feel smaller, weaker, less human. But when I got home, I realized he was right. I couldn't keep doing this alone. So for the first time in years, I called Rachel. It went to voicemail. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, my voice trembling. "It's Mom. I just wanted to hear your voice. Call me when you can." I waited for days. No response. 3 weeks later, I got a call, not from Rachel, but from Mark again. He sounded uncomfortable. "Mrs. Peterson," he said, "I just wanted to check if you're okay. Rachel mentioned she saw a missed call from you." My heart fluttered for a second. "Did she say anything else?" I asked. "She said she's been meaning to call you, but things have been hectic." Hectic. That word felt like a blade. Because no matter how busy she was, I remembered the nights I worked double shifts and still came home to tuck her in, still remembered to kiss her forehead, still remembered she was mine. After we hung up, I decided something needed to change. I couldn't live the rest of my days waiting for someone who'd already moved on from me. I started journaling, writing letters to Rachel I'd never send. It helped a little. I wrote about her first day of school, her prom dress, her graduation. I wrote about the fish tank, about Daisy and Bloom, about how grief doesn't always look like tears, it can look like silence too. Then one afternoon, Linda knocked on my door again, holding her phone. "Look," she said with wide eyes, "Rachel's on TV." My stomach dropped. It was a local news segment about young entrepreneurs. Rachel was being interviewed for her company's charity event. She spoke confidently, smiling that same radiant smile, and said, "I believe in giving back to people in need. Compassion is everything." My breath caught. Compassion. I turned off the TV after that. For a long time, I sat in silence, listening to the soft hum of the fish tank filter that hadn't been used in years. That was when something inside me broke, but also shifted. I realized I'd been clinging to the version of Rachel that no longer existed. The one who loved, who cared, who cried for a dying goldfish. That Rachel was gone. But maybe, just maybe so, was the version of me who kept waiting. That night, I dragged the old fish tank outside. It was heavier than I remembered. I placed it by the curb for collection and stood there for a while watching the streetlights reflect on the wet pavement. I whispered, "Goodbye, Daisy. Goodbye, Bloom. Goodbye, my girl." My voice cracked, but it felt strangely freeing. The next morning, I woke up to an empty corner where the tank used to be. It hurt, but the kind of hurt that means something is finally healing. I made myself a cup of coffee, opened the curtains wide, and let the morning light fill the room. It was the first time in years I'd done that. For the first time in a long while, I thought maybe it's time to start living for me again. A week later, I woke up to the sound of knocking at my front door. It startled me because no one ever knocked anymore. I shuffled slowly, clutching the edge of the wall for balance, and when I opened it, a delivery man was standing there with a bouquet of lilies, white, delicate, and expensive. "For Mrs. Peterson," he said, handing me the flowers with a polite smile. The card attached was small and simple. "Thinking of you. Rachel." My hands trembled as I read it. A bouquet after years of silence. I wanted to be grateful, I really did. But there was a part of me that felt the sting of its emptiness. A bouquet couldn't ask how my treatments were going. It couldn't sit by my bed when I could barely stand. It couldn't fill the long nights when the walls felt like they were closing in. Still, I put them in a vase and set them on the kitchen table. The scent filled the air, fresh but fleeting, just like her love. That evening, I sat at the table, staring at the lilies until the room grew dim. I thought about how strange it was that a daughter who once refused to go to bed without saying goodnight could now only speak to me through flowers. I whispered, "You used to tell me you'd take care of me when I got old." I could almost hear her little voice echoing in my head. "I promise, Mommy." Days passed, then weeks. I didn't hear from her again. The flowers wilted, their petals curling like they were ashamed of their own beauty. I threw them out with the rest of the trash and told myself I was done hoping. But life has a way of circling back when you least expect it. It was a Sunday afternoon when I got another call, this time from a nurse. "Mrs. Peterson," she said carefully, "this is St. Luke's Hospital. Your daughter, Rachel Evans, listed you as her emergency contact." My knees almost gave out. "Rachel?" I gasped. "What happened?" The nurse hesitated. "She was in a car accident. She's stable, but she's been asking for you." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mind went blank, then filled with every memory I'd ever buried. I grabbed my purse, threw on a coat, and drove to the hospital faster than I should have. The entire ride, my hands were trembling on the wheel. I wasn't sure if it was fear, anger, or something else entirely. When I arrived, I saw her lying in the hospital bed, pale and fragile, with a cast on her arm and scratches across her face. My heart clenched. She looked so small. I hadn't seen her in person since that rushed visit years ago. Now, seeing her like this, all the resentment I'd been feeding melted into something heavier, love mixed with pain. Her eyes fluttered open, and when she saw me, they filled with tears. "Mom," she whispered. My throat tightened. "I'm here, sweetheart," I said softly. I wanted to scold her, to ask why she had to nearly die to remember I existed, but the words wouldn't come. All I could do was sit beside her, holding her hand like I used to when she was a child. For hours, she drifted in and out of sleep. I stayed brushing her hair away from her forehead, feeling the ache of years lost between us. When she finally spoke again, her voice was fragile. "I didn't think you'd come," I forced a smile. "You're my daughter. Of course I came." She looked away, ashamed. "I've been awful to you." "I know." I stayed silent, letting her words spill out. "After Dad left, I blamed you. I thought you were the reason our family fell apart, and when you got sick, I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't want to see you like that weak. It scared me." Her voice broke. "But I was selfish, Mom. I thought staying away would make it easier, but it didn't. It just made me feel emptier." I listened quietly. Every word she said pierced through me. I'd imagined this moment so many times, how I'd finally hear her admit the pain she caused. But now that it was happening, it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like standing on a battlefield after the war is already over, surrounded by ruins. I reached for her hand and said softly, "You hurt me, Rachel. You broke my heart. But you're still my child. And no matter how far you ran, I never stopped waiting." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry." We sat there in silence, two broken women trying to stitch their hearts together with trembling hands. I stayed by her side all night, listening to the hum of machines, watching her breathe. It was the same sound that had comforted me in my own hospital bed not long ago. The circle had closed, but not the way I expected. In the following days, I visited her every morning. She was released a week later, and for the first time in years, she came home with me. When she walked into the house, she froze. Her eyes wandered around as if the walls were whispering old memories. "It's smaller than I remember," she said softly. I smiled faintly. "Or maybe you just got bigger." She looked at the empty corner where the fish tank used to be and frowned. "Where's Daisy's tank?" "I gave it away," I said simply. "It was time." She nodded, but I could see the guilt flicker in her eyes. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she walked up to me and hugged me tight, desperate like a child clinging to a memory she thought she'd lost forever. "I missed you, Mom," she whispered. I closed my eyes and held her, breathing her in. "I missed you too." For a few weeks, things felt almost normal again. We cooked together, talked about her work, watched old movies. She even helped me organize my medicine and repaint the kitchen. There was laughter again, faint but real. I wanted to believe it would last. But the truth is, time doesn't erase the past, it just covers it with fresh paint. Beneath that paint, cracks still form. One evening, as we were eating dinner, Rachel's phone buzzed. I caught a glimpse of the screen. It was Mark. She hesitated before answering, her tone suddenly cold. "I told you I need space," she said, and hung up. I didn't pry, but later that night I overheard her on the phone again, crying. "You don't understand Mark," she said between sobs. "I can't handle being around her too long. Every time I look at her, I see what I did wrong." Her words hit me like a slap. I stood in the hallway, unseen, frozen. She hadn't come back because she wanted to heal things. She came back out of guilt. My chest tightened. I went back to my room, quietly closing the door behind me. That night, I couldn't sleep. The truth was unbearable. Even after all the apologies, after all the hugs and promises, I was still just a reminder of her shame. I realized something then: sometimes forgiveness isn't about getting someone back. It's about letting them go without anger in your heart. The next morning, I cooked her favorite breakfast pancakes with blueberries, just like when she was little. We ate together quietly. I watched her smile faintly, unaware of what I had already decided. When she finished eating, I reached across the table and touched her hand. "Rachel," I said gently, "you've done what you needed to do. You've made peace with me, and I've made peace with you. But you don't need to stay here anymore. You have your life to live." Her eyes widened. "Mom, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you," I said, my voice steady, "and I forgive you. But love isn't supposed to be a burden. Go live your life without feeling guilty for me." She started crying again, shaking her head. "No, I can't leave you alone again," I smiled sadly. "Yes, you can, because I'll be okay this time." That afternoon, she packed her things. Before leaving, she hugged me tightly, her tears soaking my shoulder. "I'll visit, I promise," she whispered. I didn't say anything because I knew promises are fragile things. When she drove away, I stood at the window watching her car disappear down the road. I felt a deep ache, but not the same one as before. This one felt clean, quiet, like closing a chapter, not losing a person. I turned back to the kitchen, where sunlight poured across the table. The space where the lilies had stood was empty again, but the air didn't feel lonely anymore. I picked up my journal and began to write. Gnome. Love changes shape over time. It can fade, fracture, or return wearing a different face, but even when it leaves behind something strength. I didn't write to Rachel anymore after that. I wrote for me, for the woman who learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and loneliness doesn't mean defeat. Winter came earlier than usual that year. The trees outside my window shed their leaves faster than I could sweep them away, and the air carried that quiet stillness only December knows. The holidays always have a way of stirring ghosts of faces at dinner tables, laughter echoing through rooms that now stay silent. I didn't decorate that year. No wreath, no lights, no tree, just a single candle by the window flickering in the cold evening glow. It had been nearly 6 months since Rachel left again. At first, she called every few days, always cheerful, always trying. But as weeks passed, her calls slowed, then stopped. I'd expected it, really. The pattern had become familiar love that came in waves, retreating just when I dared to reach for it. Still, I wasn't angry anymore. I'd learned to stop expecting warmth from someone still learning what love really means. Instead, I found a strange peace in the quiet. I spent my mornings sitting by the window, with my tea, watching the neighborhood children play. Sometimes their laughter reminded me of Rachel as a child, her curls bouncing her tiny hands, clutching that fishbowl, squealing when Daisy would dart through the plastic castle. I would smile, remembering that small, pure version of her untouched by ambition or resentment. One afternoon, while dusting the living room, I found an old photo album buried under a pile of newspapers. The leather cover was cracked, but inside were snapshots of a life that once glowed: Rachel's first birthday, her graduation, our beach trips. In one photo, she stood beside her father, both grinning as I took the picture. I'd almost forgotten his face. He left when Rachel was 16, chasing something or someone younger, freer. For years, she blamed me for his leaving. "You made him miserable," she'd shouted once. Maybe that was the root of everything. Maybe her anger toward me was just a wound she inherited. That night, I stared at that photo until my eyes blurred. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I prayed. Not for Rachel to come back, not for time to rewind, but for understanding, for grace. Because I realized something deep and painful. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are carrying the same kind of hurt. They just pass it forward without knowing. The next morning, I received a letter. A real letter, handwritten and sealed with a return address from the city. I recognized Rachel's handwriting instantly, the loops, the slant, the way she always dotted her I with a tiny circle. My heart started pounding as I tore it open. Dear Mom, it began. I've tried to write this so many times, but I never knew how to start. I know I've said sorry before, but I don't think I ever really told you why. After Dad left, I couldn't stand seeing you hurt. You tried to stay strong, but I saw you cry at night when you thought I was asleep. I hated him for leaving you, but somehow I hated you more for staying. I didn't understand then that staying takes more courage than leaving. I ran from you because I didn't want to see what love costs. But now I see it every sacrifice, every scar, every quiet moment you gave me. I'm pregnant, Mom, and I'm scared. I think I finally understand how much you must have loved me. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope you'll meet your grandchild one day. I didn't realize I was crying until my tears soaked through the paper. My hands trembled as I held the letter to my chest. Pregnant. My daughter, the same little girl who once buried her goldfish under the old oak tree, was going to be a mother. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake replaying her words, my mind torn between joy and sorrow. There was so much she still didn't understand, but maybe motherhood would teach her what I never could. Still, part of me wondered if she truly wanted me to be part of this new life, or if this letter was simply her way of clearing her conscience before moving on again. Weeks passed without another word from her. Then one morning in February, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Rachel was standing there, bundled in a thick coat, her belly visibly round beneath it. She looked older, softer somehow, like time had humbled her. "Hi, Mom," she said quietly. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat closed up, and all I could do was reach out and pull her into my arms. I felt the baby between us, this small bridge between generations of brokenness and love. "I didn't know if you'd want to see me," she whispered. "I always want to see you," I said, my voice trembling. Always. We spent that afternoon talking by the fire. She told me about her pregnancy, about how Mark had left after finding out she was expecting. "I guess I'm finally getting a taste of what you went through," she said bitterly. I shook my head. "No, sweetheart. Don't see it that way. This isn't punishment. It's an invitation. Life is giving you a chance to do better, to love without fear this time." She looked at me for a long time, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't know if I can." I smiled softly. "You can, because you're my daughter." Over the next few months, she stayed with me. I helped her set up a nursery in the spare room, painted the walls a soft cream color, folded tiny onesies, and rocked her to sleep when anxiety stole her rest. It was strange how easily old habits returned, the way I'd wake at dawn to make her tea, the way I'd listen to her breathing through the night. Motherhood doesn't end when your children grow up. It just changes shape. Then one early spring morning, she went into labor. The panic in her voice when she shouted, "Mom, it's time," jolted me out of bed. I drove her to the hospital, my heart racing the entire way. Hours later, I held my granddaughter for the first time. Her name was Lily, like the flowers Rachel once sent me. She was perfect. Tiny fingers, a wrinkled nose, a soft cry that somehow made every lonely night I'd ever endured worth it. Rachel watched me cradle her, baby tears rolling down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered again. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see the girl who abandoned me. I saw a woman trying to unlearn her pain. "You don't need to keep apologizing," I said gently. "Just love her. That's enough." The next few months were the closest we'd been in decades. We spent our days taking turns with Lily, cooking, laughing, and sitting on the porch watching the world go by. It felt like life had given me a second chance, not just to be a mother, but to be whole again. But happiness, I've learned, is fragile. One evening, as I was rocking Lily to sleep, Rachel received a call. Her face went pale as she listened. Then she turned to me. "It's a job offer," she said quietly. "In New York. They want me to start next month." My heart sank. "And Lily?" "I'd have to take her, of course," she said. "But it's a big opportunity, Mom. A chance to finally provide for her." I nodded slowly, trying to hide the ache rising inside me. "Of course, sweetheart. You have to do what's best for your child." We both knew what that meant. She would leave. Again. That night, after she went to bed, I walked into the nursery and sat beside Lily's crib. The moonlight spilled across her tiny face, and I whispered, "Your mother's going to give you the world, little one. But please, never forget to come home sometimes." A week later, Rachel packed her bags. We said our goodbyes in the driveway. She hugged me tightly, tears streaming down her face. "I'll visit Mom. I promise." I smiled faintly. "I know." When the car disappeared down the street, I stood there for a long time, the wind brushing through my gray hair. I wasn't angry. Not even sad, really. Just grateful. Because for the first time, Rachel left not out of guilt, but out of love for her child, for herself. And that, to me, was growth. That evening, I went back inside, sat by the window, and lit a candle. The same one I'd kept for lonely Decembers. But this time, it wasn't for grief, it was for hope. I whispered to the flame, "Be better than us, little Lily." Spring melted into summer, and the house settled back into its familiar silence. But this time, it wasn't an empty silence, it was peaceful. I had learned to fill the quiet with small joys. Morning tea on the porch, tending to the hydrangeas in the front yard, or rereading old letters I once couldn't bear to open. The ache was still there, of course, but it had softened like a scar that no longer hurts when touched. Rachel called often from New York, sometimes with Lily cooing in the background, sometimes just to talk about her new job. She sounded tired but happy, and that was enough for me. We spoke every Sunday morning without fail, and each call ended with her saying, "I love you, Mom." It was a small sentence, but every time I heard it, I felt something mend inside me. One afternoon, as I sat folding laundry, I heard the faint ping of my phone. It was a photo from Rachel Lily now, nearly one standing on wobbly legs beside a fish tank. My breath caught. Inside was a single goldfish orange and small swimming in circles beneath a tiny plastic castle. Beneath the photo, Rachel had written, "Meet Daisy too." She cried when it died. I told her I used to, too. I stared at the message for a long time, smiling through my tears. It felt like the universe had written a poem across 3 generations. Me, Rachel, and little Lily, all connected through fragile golden things that we once cried over. Maybe this was what healing looked like, not a perfect reconciliation, but quiet echoes of love passed down like soft ripples through time. A few months later, Rachel surprised me with a visit. When I opened the door, Lily was in her arms, laughing and reaching toward me. Her tiny hands grasped at my face, and I kissed her forehead, overwhelmed by a love so pure it erased years of pain. Rachel looked at me, smiling shyly. "I wanted her to know you not just through stories." I felt my throat tighten. "You don't know how much this means to me." We spent that weekend together cooking, playing with Lily, watching the sunset from the porch. It was simple, but it felt sacred. There was one evening when Lily was asleep, and Rachel and I sat quietly with our tea. She turned to me and said softly, "Do you ever wish things had been different?" I thought for a moment. Sometimes. But if they were, maybe we wouldn't be here like this. Maybe I wouldn't appreciate it as much. She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I think I used to be so angry because I thought love was supposed to be easy. But you showed me it's not. It's work. It's forgiveness." I smiled faintly. And sometimes it's letting go without resentment. She reached over and held my hand. I'm proud of you, Mom. That caught me off guard. Parents are used to saying those words, not hearing them. It made my heart swell. I realized that the girl who once cried over a dying fish had grown into a woman who finally understood what love costs and what it gives back. The next morning, I woke early and found Rachel already in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared breakfast. Lily was sitting on the floor, banging a wooden spoon against a pot, her laughter echoing off the walls. I stood in the doorway watching them. My daughter and my granddaughter and I felt something shift deep inside me. For years, I had lived waiting for an apology, for recognition, for redemption. But now, I saw that life had already given me all of it, just in unexpected forms. Rachel had found her way back not because I demanded it, but because love, real love, always circles home eventually. When they left that Sunday, I walked them to the car. Rachel hugged me tightly. We'll come back soon, she said. I'll be here, I smiled, always. As I watched them drive away, I thought about how much of my life had been spent trying to hold on. But maybe love isn't about holding. It's about trusting that what's meant to stay will always find its way back. That evening, I sat at my writing desk, opened my journal, and began a new entry. She once cried for a fish, but not for me. I used to think that meant I failed as a mother. But now I see it meant I raised a heart that could still feel. She learned to love, to lose, and to return. And maybe that's all any mother can hope for. I closed the journal and looked toward the empty corner where the old fish tank once stood. The sunlight caught a speck of dust floating in the air, and for some reason, it reminded me of that gentle hum, the sound of the water filter, that used to lull us both to sleep. Life like that hum goes on quietly, even when we stop noticing. Weeks turned into months. My health, while fragile, stayed steady. I found new strength in small routines, watering plants, baking writing letters I'd never send. Rachel visited when she could, sometimes with Lily, sometimes alone. And every visit, no matter how short, was enough. Then one autumn morning, I received a video call. Rachel's face appeared on the screen, lit by soft, golden light. Lily wants to say hi, she said, turning the camera. Lily grinned, waving her tiny hand. Hi, Grandma. Tears filled my eyes. Hi, my love. Rachel smiled. She's been asking about you nonstop. We're planning to come for Thanksgiving. I laughed my heart full. Then I'd better start baking early. After we hung up, I sat in silence, the glow from the phone screen fading. My heart felt lighter than it had in years. Not because everything was perfect, it never would be, but because we had finally stopped measuring love in visits or calls. Love was there, steady and quiet, woven between the miles, in laughter and in memory. As evening fell, I stepped outside to the porch. The air was crisp, the sky painted with streaks of orange and pink. I thought about the long road that had brought me here, the loneliness, the pain, the forgiveness, the rediscovery. If someone had told me years ago that this would be my ending, I wouldn't have believed them. But now, standing under that soft, fading light, I realized it was the ending I needed. Sometimes we spend our lives waiting for those who've drifted away to come back. And sometimes they do. But when they don't, we learn that love can still exist quietly within us, enough to carry on. I closed my eyes and whispered almost to myself, she cried when her fish died, but someday she'll cry when I'm gone too. And that will be enough, because she'll know I loved her every second of her life. The candle on my porch flickered as a gentle breeze passed through. Somewhere inside, I heard the faint echo of laughter, the ghost of my child, my granddaughter, and maybe even the woman I used to be. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone. I felt full. If you've ever loved someone who drifted away or waited for a voice that never came, I hope my story reminds you this love may leave, but it never dies. It changes shape. It returns in the faces of children, in the quiet forgiveness that heals us in the way light always finds its way back through the cracks. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know if you've ever had to forgive someone you still love. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us of the fragile, beautiful ways love endures.